This week's parasha, Parashat Shoftim, has a wild mitzvah at the very end of the parasha. It's the halacha of the Egla Arufa. The Egla Arufa is normally translated as the decapitated calf or as the axed calf. It's a special halacha that if, God forbid, somebody was murdered in between cities, so they measure the closest city, and the closest city has to go to the nearby valley and take an egla, take a calf by a valley that has never been worked, has never been sown, and then to axe the back of its neck, to shecht it, to slaughter it in a non-normal manner. And that's supposed to bring kapara, atonement, to the town where he was closest to when he died. And it's as if the Zakinim of the town are saying, we don't take responsibility for this, because there's an idea that maybe they did have some responsibility because they didn't invite him into their homes, or they didn't make sure somebody was escorting him out. So they're basically saying, we didn't know what took place, we're not connected to this murder, we're sorry, bring kapara to our town. That's the halacha of the Egla Arufa. Now, it's a strange halacha. Now, normally we're used to kapara. We're used to atonement coming from shchita. You shecht an animal, you shecht the cow, you bring it to the Beit HaMikdash, you bring it to the Mishkan, and you offer it up as a sacrifice. And the sacrifice will bring kapara. The dam, the blood will bring kapara. So that language that we have in our parasha is very normal for atonement. But what's strange is that in this particular case, it's not a normal shchita. You're not doing the regular laws of slaughtering. And number two, the bigger question is that you're not taking it to the actual Mishkan or to the Beit HaMikdash. You're not taking it to the temple, but you're doing it in a random valley next to the town where he was murdered. So what's going on with that? So I saw a beautiful Dvar Torah from Rav Yonatan Grossman, who actually explains a little bit of the thinking behind what he assumes to be the thinking to what this whole ceremony is all about. Now the Ramban comes along and he notices that there's actually two other mitzvot in the Torah that deal with killing an animal in a non-normal way, and they also relate to bringing kapara and atonement in different kind of ways. So one of them is the Sa'ir La'azazel. It's the famous goat that gets sent off to Azazel, thrown off the rocky cliff, and that's supposed to be part of the atoning of the sins that takes place on the Yom Kippur service. And then there's another mitzvah of the Para Aduma, the red heifer, the burning of the red heifer, and using the ashes for purification process. Rav Grossman says that the case of Paraduma actually has a lot of similar language with the case of the Egla Arufa. Because it says by the Paraduma, you want to take for yourself a pure, complete para, a cow, asher ein ba mum, that has no blemishes, asher lo ala le'ol, that has never had a load, a burden on its shoulder, and unworked, pure, unblemished para aduma. Now the egel is the baby calf. It's the baby calf. It says by our parasha that it says He says it has to be a calf that also has never worked. So what's this connection? You have yourself a cow, you have a calf, and both of them can't work. If you have this unworked cow, that's going to bring about atonement for the case involved. So what's really going on over here? So on the surface level, there's a direct connection between the Para Aduma and the Egla Arufa because they're both dealing with death. The Egla Arufa most directly. Somebody was murdered right now, and now we're trying to bring a kapara for the murder. By Para Aduma, it's a similar story. It's a person is not allowed to enter the Mishkan if he has the Tumat Met, if he has the impurity of death. So this is a way now to purify him in order to be able to go into the Beit HaMikdash and get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay. Next idea. What's this concept of arifa? Egla Arufa. Arufa is like a very strange word. So like the art school here translated as axed. Why is it called axed? Because you can use an axe to kill the egla. So here, says Rabbi Grossman, there's a connection. There's only one other place in the Torah where you have the idea of an arifa. Where do you have that? You have it by the case of the Peter Hamor. So there's a halakha. The Bechor, the firstborn, has to be redeemed. This takes us back to leaving Egypt. Every firstborn was redeemed. Until today, every firstborn child, instead of donating the child to God and sanctifying him for his life to God, instead you bring some cash to the Kohen and you do a redemption of the firstborn. This is true with people. This is also true with kosher animals, as well as the Hamor, as well as the donkey. The donkey itself has to be redeemed. Now, ultimately, when it comes to animals, you can redeem the animal by by doing a shchita and bringing it as a korban. But by a hamor, you can't do that. So by human beings, you use cash. By an animal, by a seh, by a lamb, you wouldn't use cash. You'd actually do a shchita and bring the animal itself. But by a hamor, you're not allowed to bring the hamor. So also you're supposed to redeem it through a kosher animal. Fine. What happens though if somebody doesn't do that? Let's say somebody doesn't do the halacha with the chamor, you have a firstborn chamor, and you don't go through the whole process of the petah chamor. So then what happens? So then there's a special halacha. Ve'im lo tifdeh va'arafto. If you don't, this is back in Sefer Shemot, Yud Gimel Tet Vav, if you don't redeem the hamor, then you have to kill it and axe it and through the non-shchita method. So the idea of arifa is you're doing a type of shchita, but it's not an actual shchita, it's more like a hariga. It's more of a killing of an animal, and in this case you'd be killing the bechor, this firstborn chamor, for not doing it properly. But that, what Rabbi Grossman wants to say, is going to be the first level, just to realize that that arifa is trying to tell you that we're not doing a full shchita, we're doing actually a regular hariga, a regular killing, and that would be called arifa in these two mitzvot. Fine. But now the question is, okay, there's some more interesting halachot. Where do we do the arifa? Where's this calf killed? So the calf is killed in a nachal, in this valley, this wadi, that was never worked. It's a very hard nachal, and there's no way anything can grow. And the Ramban even says that going forward, you're never going to grow anything in this place ever again. Also, he said the animal, the egla itself, the calf itself, can never have been worked. So what's this concept of a land that can't be worked, an animal that can't be worked, you can't work it long term? So here I thought was a beautiful idea. And he does this based on a Gemara and Sotah. Says Rabbi Grossman that what took place with the murder? You have a person that was alive, healthy, walking around, living life, and now he was murdered. There was a great loss that took place. What was the loss? It was the loss of the potential. He was the potential of a life that could have accomplished great things and grow and do mitzvot and do awesome stuff. But all that potential is lost. So how does the kapara happen? And this I thought was very cool. The kapara is going to happen by symbolically demonstrating this potential was lost. So what do you take? You take an animal that's young, an egla, a calf, it's a baby cow, and it hasn't reached its older age. It hasn't had children. It hasn't produced its fruit. It hasn't done what it was supposed to do in life. It never had the potential. And then you kill it in a valley that has no potential. It's a place that wasn't worked, and it's a place that you're not going to work. You're not going to sow that land. Just to make the statement clear to everybody, look at how terrible this murder was. We lost the potential of an unbelievable life. Now the last point. Why is this arifa taking place outside of the Mishkan, outside and in an area in the middle of a nachal, in the middle of a valley? Why in this strange place? So explains Rabbi Grossman. I thought this was excellent. If you go back to Parashat Bamidbar, Parashat Meseh, as well as in many other places in the Torah, the Torah tells us that whenever a murder takes place, the land gets upset. There's a problem. The land of Israel does not want to be impure. Velo tetameh et haaretz asher atem yoshvim ba, asher ani shochen batocha, ki ani Adonai shochen betoch bnei Yisrael. That's back in Perek Lamed Hey, Pasuk Lamed Daled, in Parashat Mas'eh in Bamidbar. God says this land is holy, and if you have a holy land and somebody is murdered, it doesn't work. The land will spit you out. And the Torah will discuss, what do you do with a murderer? What if you do if you're murdered by accident? You have to put him in the city of refuge, the Arei Miklat. There has to be a certain kapara that takes place, a certain atonement, or else the land can't handle it. The land is too holy. You cannot have murder. In our case, there's a problem. Because the Skenim are responsible for their city, and they don't know why that guy was murdered. They don't know who did it. There's no way to have justice. There's no justice in the judicial courts, which is one approach in the Gemara to understand why they're saying what they're saying or why they're doing the whole kapara. There's also no social justice here. They didn't protect him. They didn't escort him. So on both of those levels, they feel responsible. And now come along the Skenim. They need to make kapara specifically for their city, because the land is going to spit them out. So Dafka, near their city, in the closest valley, that's where they're going to do the full kapara service in order to calm the land and say, Hashem, we're with you. We might have messed up. We're going to do better in the future, but we're going to make sure this is a holy land where these things don't take place. Shabbat Shalom.